Richard Best.
Here.
Councilmember Julie Berberick.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Linda Combs.
I think she'll be here in a minute.
I believe she's
She's coming.
she's right.
Can I give a quick here? Deputy Mayor Linda Combs.
Here.
Yay! Mayor Edna DeVries.
Yeah, thank you.
Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, you all stand, and Councilwoman Burbrick, would you lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on our agenda is the approval of the agenda, including the approval of the consent agenda, which includes action memorandum 19-073 and action memorandum 19-074, the approval of our minutes of our previous meeting from September 24th, and the rest of the items on the agenda. What is the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda as presented. Comments, questions, amendments by the council? All those in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. The yeses have it, and we have approved our agenda. The next item on our agenda is communications and appearances request. George, you're up, sir. Please come and talk to us regarding the presentation from the golf course manager.
Good evening, everyone. My name is George Collum. I'm the golf course manager for the city of Palmer. And it's been a while since I've been here, but the news is good. As I'm sure most of you know, it was a record year for the golf course, record year weather-wise for probably the state of Alaska as far as playing conditions and good weather to be outside. So this was the first year of my new contract that we are trying out, and I think it's gone very well as far as I can tell for both sides. I don't know if you've had a chance to look over this report that was in the packet, but I'll just go over it real quick. We had 12 holes open on March 29th. March is always an early opening for us. We've only opened in the month of March probably 5 times in the history of the course. The earliest ever was March 6th, which was 2016. Whenever that happens, it's always helpful for the golf course getting in shape early and getting more rounds played and making more money. We had all 18 holes open by the beginning of April, and on April 13th we had power carts and driving range available. And we did have to close for a week in April due to snow, but that's not totally unusual. We reopened all 18 holes on April 24th. We had irrigation going, I think this was the earliest ever, by April 16th. And the earthquake last November didn't seem to affect us too much at the golf course. We didn't have any unusual breakage of pipes or any damage to the well or the pump, so that was lucky, because that's always tough to overcome. We had all 18 greens getting water by the end of that week we tested it, which was unbelievable. That was a great thing to have. We were able to go on all 17 of our 18 greens by last November 27th, which is really early, and then all 18 greens by May 2nd. And that's always great because we're kind of the host, kind of the annual host of the US Open qualifier up here, which it's a local qualifier, and if you make it through that qualifier, you go to the sectionals down south, whichever site you go to. If you qualify there, you go to the US Open, which is a big deal. So it's always nice to have that feather in our cap. In my opinion, which I'm sure, I know I'm biased, but I'm pretty objective, I think, about golf course conditions, and I would say that we had the best golf course in the state again this year. It was pretty awesome, and we get a lot of compliments, and people were really thrilled with the course. And as a matter of fact, I just had a player from Kenai come and rent a set of clubs just a few days ago and played and came back in and was just absolutely thrilled with the course, even though we have tarped 14 of our greens. And he was comparing it to the Kenai Golf Course and saying it's just no comparison. And he loves playing here as much as he can, and and how great the course is. And I said, well, that's thank you. And I know it's not quite as good as it usually is, but it's late in the year, so we are still open. We still have a reasonable amount of play, and we'll stay open until we can't. We usually what kind of shuts us down is obviously the weather. If it snows too much or it gets too cold, we'll shut it down. But the next 10 days look okay, so we'll keep going. We'll keep ticking away at it, and it always helps the budget a little bit, the bottom line. I made a list of the events that pretty much all the major events we hosted throughout the summer. It's not everything, but it's everything probably worth mentioning here. As far as things that have a pretty good amount of players, or are important to the golf in the state of Alaska. This year in July we hosted the Alaska State Amateur, which is the largest probably tournament of the year. 4 days with over probably about 120 golfers a day. And so that's a great one to have. We don't get that every year. It kind of rotates around to different golf courses throughout. I do know that we're scheduled to have the Alaska State Match Play, which is a 3-day event next summer. Could be 4 days. They're talking about making it 4 days. And we also have a spring jackpot from the really nice events to have. And we have been picking up some additional tournaments due to the fact that the course is so good. I mean, that always helps when your reputation is good, that you provide a good golf course. That makes it easy for people to pick your golf course to have an event at. We were also picking up a few other events that aren't really golf related as much, but on June 20th, we had Active Souls. They did a 5K race at the course, and we used part of the golf course and kind of the perimeter around 1 and 2, and that went really well, and they're excited to do it again. And it's nice to add some events at the golf course that are not just golf, so they're more usable by people who aren't golfers. And a lot of people still come to the golf course and go, I didn't even know this was here. So I'm not sure. I feel like I've marketed it pretty well over the years, but it's tucked back by the airport, so I guess if you don't go down that way, you might not notice it, and if you're not a golfer, but we'll keep trying to get more of the word out that there is a golf course. It's going to be on its 30th year, I believe, this year, so it's been there for a while, and it's come a long way. I've seen it since it was first built, back when it kind of still looked like a hayfield, didn't have much irrigation, and now I would say I would put it up against definitely any course in the state, but even courses down south, it holds up. So I'm proud of that. And it's a course that, an asset that the city of Palmer can be proud of, I think. So on the second page, or my second page, I have a list of our accomplishments for 2019. And some of them are repetitive if you've seen these reports before. Obviously, we try to maximize revenues and control the expenses. The big thing, probably the two really big things this year, was getting the clubhouse deck replaced. And thank you for budgeting that. And there's a picture of it that I sent over to Norma, and she's displaying now. It turned out really well. We had a lot of volunteer help. Steve Rinker was the lead on that project. He's one of our regular golfers, season pass holder. He's got his sign there so you can kind of see, what his business is. And they worked really hard at it for 2 weeks and did it for a really reasonable price, I would say. It also allowed us to be able to get the clubhouse and the cart barn repainted, which was way overdue. So overall, it just really cleaned it up. That side picture there is the side deck facing the parking lot. It's an area that we never really could use, and we talked about removing it and not even having a deck there. But once I talked to Steve Rinker about leveling it out, because it used to be a 2-level and it just wasn't a usable space. But when we made it 1 level, we were able to put some bistro tables and chairs there, and people loved that. I mean, that faces the setting sun in the afternoon, so it's warm and it's a pleasant place to have an adult beverage or hang out, so that turned out really nice. Um, and then it's hard to really tell from some of the pictures, but the repainting really is nice. I mean, the paint was kind of peeling off parts of the building and the cart barn, so it really turned out really, it was a nice thing to do. And I was glad we were able to pull that off too. And I think, I don't, I don't see the city side of the budget as much now, but I'm pretty sure we came in under budget for not just, I mean, the deck had its budget, but within the deck and the painting of both buildings, we came in pretty far into the budget on that, so that was awesome. We continued to acquire some newer equipment. We picked up 13 carts from Anchorage Golf Course. They're Yamahas. They're good golf carts at a really reasonable price. And I know that I know there's some talk, and I haven't seen next year's budget fully, but if it's been approved or not. But I know we're talking about picking up some more of those carts, and I know they're willing to sell some more. So it just freshens our fleet up without spending a ton of money. In order to replace the whole fleet, we'd be looking at about 800,000 probably to do it. So this is a great way to add some newer carts that take some of the pressure off our older carts, which we continue to fix. We've purchased some extra equipment for those carts to kind of liven them back up and make them run better. So and we'll continue to do that. We also purchased a 2009 Toro 3150Q triplex mower from Fishhook Golf Course. Matthew Moffett, I'm sure a lot of you know him. They got some equipment up there to sell, and he was nice enough to let us buy that, and it was a good purchase for us. And it's a newer mower that mows greens, and so it's great to have it, and it was a really good price on that. We also picked up another debris blower. These are large pull behind blowers that can blow a ton of leaves and debris off the golf course fast. So it really helps us in the spring when we're cleaning up from winter, and also in the fall to get rid of leaves. As a matter of fact, we used it today to clear off some leaves off of one of the tee boxes. Let's see. Oh, and we got another greens roller, which is really nice for making the greens smoother and faster, which is always a big deal for golfers. So we were able to get one more of those. And we had one that we'd gotten from Anchorage Golf Course last year, and it made such a big difference. It really was nice to have a second one so we can roll the greens quickly and get them done before the golfers get on the course. And again, those things, word of mouth gets out that you have this equipment, that you use it, and your greens are that good that it just brings golfers and brings more business. We continue to grow the game of golf through a couple different programs. We have our Hook a Kid on Golf Clinic, and our junior golf program, and then we do a free kids day clinic along with the Palmer Invitational, which is our big pro-am that we host every year, and we get about 50 to 60 kids that come out for that. We could get more, but then it gets to be a little hard to handle. I remember the first year I did, I had 100, and I should have known better because I was a school teacher, but we made it work. But for safety purposes, we cut it back a little bit, and it's a great program to get them started or get them introduced to golf. And I have noticed that we're seeing a lot more junior golfers starting to play golf at Palmer Golf Course, and even in the state, it's starting to pick up again. Even families are starting to come out and play a little bit more, and that's one of our big goals. Our goals and projects for 2020 is to continue to maximize revenues and control expenses, provide a well-conditioned golf course as always, increase rounds played and attract new tournaments, which we are doing, purchase additional used Yamaha carts like I mentioned, possibly build a patio and outdoor kitchen in the out back behind the deck, and I know that was something that we've talked about. I've talked to Nate about and Brad about working on that just to kind of make that area even more usable out on the back patio below the deck. And then we'll continue to repair power carts and maintain the equipment. And we're still replacing some old PVC pipe in the irrigation lines, but it's almost gone. So we're pretty close, and this is why our irrigation system is so good now. We don't have to stop, fix a break as much as we used to. Dirk, my superintendent, has put in a lot of valves to shut off different parts of the golf course. It used to be that if you had a break, you had to shut the whole system down to fix it, and it was really cumbersome to do. Now he can just valve off that part of the golf course and we can keep watering, which has helped a lot. And all these little fixes have made a big difference over time. Um, so I need to purchase another large rotary deck rough mower. That's something I'm in the process of trying to lock down for next year, and it's probably in the ballpark between 12 to 15,000 for that piece of equipment. But we have a lot of rough on that golf course to mow, so having a second large rough mower will really help us keep up. And it's nice to have a backup mower, because if the one we have goes down, it takes time to get parts up here and fix it. So it's nice to have that second mower. And that's probably our biggest priority as far as a piece of equipment for next year. And then we're going to overseed fairways 10 through 12. Last year, we had quite a bit of ice damage to those fairways. They sit low, they hold water, and they just didn't come back like we hoped they would. They're full of poana, which is not the best grass for a golf course. It's kind of more of a native weed that takes over when you have weak areas. So we're gonna come back and fix those fairways. I mean, they were playable this year, but they're just not up to the standards that we want. And then, you know, we keep trying to get liner in those ponds. I've got liner. It's just a huge project, but I think we've got the right people lined up for spring to put some of that liner that we got from a roofing project in Anchorage last year or the year before, and so we're going to work on that. And if we can get that in, it helps. Those ponds drain water really fast. It's pretty expensive to keep them full. The electric bill is high because you got to run that pump a lot. So I pick and choose when we fill them, usually around major golf tournaments. So we're going to try to make it so that we can keep them full all the time, because it really makes a difference. It makes it a lot prettier out there. I continue to use social media to promote the course. If you're a Facebook person, you might see a lot of my posts on Facebook. I try to post regularly updates, and also talking about, you know, the events that we have, and so that's a great way to get word out about the course. I want to update our website. Continue to offer the flying golf special, where if you fly in and you let us know you're coming, you get $10 off your green fee. So hopefully that encourages people to use the airport, and it has. And we do get people that fly in for golf, so it's kind of a neat thing that they can land and park right down at that end of the runway. And sometimes we'll go pick them up, and sometimes they'll just walk over. So it's pretty convenient. And then we'll continue to grow the game of golf through our junior programs and clinics. So that's the end of my report, unless there's any questions.
Questions or comments from the council? A couple of things for me. We did certificates, you know, I was out there when the deck was finished and we did, you know, that ribbon cutting. But we do have certificates, so maybe in the spring, when all of the people would be around, I'd like to personally come out there and present those. We tried to do them at the, Palmer Pride picnic, but none of them were available, but, so just at some time. And then, with the new highway, the Glen Highway, do you know if the highway allows the golf courses to have little green signs, you know, like they have airport signs? Do they allow that, and can you work with them to get those?
They do, but I believe it's something that the city of Palmer has to do, because I've tried to do it before, but they always refer me back to
You're already on it.
the city of Palmer. Yeah.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
So part of the project includes wayfinding signs to point business district, airport, golf course, state house, so those are in the works.
Okay, good, great.
They may not look like what we want them to look like, they may look like state signs.
Signs,
but it's-
the green ones
it's in the
probably,
works.
huh? Okay, great, well, good, I'm glad that we're on that.
And,
Okay.
and that really is a very inexpensive way to advertise the
Mhm.
golf course. And for the people that say they don't know there's a golf course,
Right,
then you're going to know, because you're going to drive by there, so
yeah,
you'll see it. And there used to be a really big sign out there. We have it in the maintenance yard, but they don't allow that sign anymore. It was a big, long blue sign that said Palmer Golf Course. It was phenomenal. But then it turned into a little brown sign with a golf bag and an arrow. So hopefully we can get something a little better than that.
Okay, any other comments or, oh yes, Councilman Best.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Uh-huh.
George, you had mentioned some golf carts that might come available to purchase in Anchorage. Cost of a new cart versus what a used cart, what we might be able to get that, what are we looking at there?
New carts are typically about 6,000 to 6,500 plus about 500 each to ship them. So I mean they're expensive, and that's if we were going to go down that route, I would say that we'd want to look at maybe a wholesale, just get rid of everything we've got, and that's getting tougher to auction off those carts. None of the Anchorage courses allow private carts anymore, so that kind of hurts. If you sell them in larger lots, you can get some of the bigger construction companies. They like to run them, or warehouses, but that's a big thing to turn that page and say, okay, let's do a whole new fleet. Um, I mean, it would be great. I'd love it, and the golfers would love it, but it's a big expense. The used carts are about 2,500 for those Yamahas.
Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And also, so with having a aging fleet of carts, how much are we expending in average yearly servicing? I mean, just in bulk or per cart would.
Not that much actually. You got to replace belts, and the typical maintenance on a cart is you change the oil and the filters and everything. That's normal. But as far as some of the clutches and starter generators, they can be a little bit expensive. A starter generator could cost you probably around $300 for a new one, and then clutches are about $600. But through the internet, which I'm, getting more and more internet savvy and tech savvy of shopping, I've found that you can find pretty much anything on the internet, either rebuilt for really reasonable prices. Whether it's Amazon, I'm shocked at what you can find on Amazon actually, and it's free shipping, which is even better if you have Amazon Prime. And I know there's the pitfalls of the internet shopping. Believe me, I've felt it at the golf course, but you got to take advantage of it too. It's a great way to get parts, without shipping them up.
It was amazing to see just like how it was utilized. We had this last tournament with friends of Matsu Golf or Palmer Golf Course. Like there's massage tables out there on the deck, and it was just being used in a different way. So it was nice to see that space being utilized. So great job on that.
Yeah, and it really, you're right. I mean, it really did get more use. It was a more pleasant place to be than the old deck that was kind of falling apart, and even the Oktoberfest tournament, which we had on October 5th, we had people on the deck eating afterwards, and it was a little cool, but it was just so nice to be outside that day. It was sunny and it's beautiful. So, and the course looks great. I mean, the mountains are white and the course is green. It's pretty striking actually. So.
Councilwoman Ramirez? Yes. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
Are you gonna do anything special for the 30th anniversary if that's the case this next year?
Yes, I would. Yes, I would like to do something. And I don't know exactly the date, and I will talk to Nate and Brad about that, and we'll make a plan. But yes, I think it's definitely something we need to do. It's a big deal. 30 years is, believe it or not, that's kind of an old golf course. I mean, a lot of things happen, and there's a lot of history there, and we do have a Hall of Fame that we induct people in that have been instrumental to that golf course over the years, and so we just we got to pick the right date, and hopefully I mean we got plenty of golfers that'll show up, and hopefully we get some some of the council to come over and celebrate that because it'll be a great thing.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Well, thank you, sir, for
Thank you.
your report. And thank you for doing a good job for the city of Palmer. Appreciate that. Okay, the next item on our agenda is audience participation. Anyone in the audience can come and address the council on any matter. 3 minutes if you're representing yourself and 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Audience participation is now open. Okay, seeing no one come forth, audience participation is now closed. Moving on to reports. Sir, you have a report?
I think George gave it for me. So the golf course has been as we discussed earlier, it's the contract, the way it was reconfigured, it is a win-win for both. And we're better able to track the city expenditures towards the golf course and what our return is on that. Everything that George talked about, not everything, most of the things George talked about for money is incorporated in the budget, with the exception of the CIP. So there's some proposals in the CIP that the council will be able to take a look at and decide if they want to do that or not.
Okay.
And then full ponds versus less rough, I think that's a fair trade, keep our course competitive. What you've got in front of you is the building report for September. Again, it just shows how much investment is going on in Palmer. I won't belabor the point, other than to, if you look at the very bottom of the report where it says 2019, $28 million of valuation, that is number 2 by a long shot. And if Fred Meyer didn't build that big building, it'd be number 1. But you can't discount Fred Meyer's building because it is an investment in Palmer. So it's nice to see that the numbers with the amount of other investment besides one single investment has made it a great year.
Right.
The Glen Highway is ongoing. I think they're gonna have everything ready for winter. Public Works did a walkthrough with the stuff the city is supposed to take over based on substantial completion. We're not sure that they're substantially complete, but we still have to maintain those. We have an obligation to maintain those roads if DOT falls through the cracks. But they've got a pretty good punch list to get us ready for winter. We're not happy about everything, but if they do everything they said they're gonna do, we'll be able to get through the winter and then they can finish up next year. One of the biggest questions I get is, no, the paved walkway in front of City Hall is not the final project. That will be concrete when it's done, but they can't leave it dirt, so they paved it. Stoplights, all should be working before too long. We expect within 2 weeks, they'll all be on within the city and on Glen Highway. So just pay attention to the current cones, the current signs, traffic patterns are changing as they complete their items to get ready for winter. The Radio Free Palmer schedule is there. One announcement, Chief McNutt is deploying with the Air Force overseas. He will depart for training next week. He will return in July. The interim chief will be split over a couple of months. First will be Chief Byers will take it, and then later in 2020, Chief Russell will take over. So both very capable assistant chiefs who will be stepping up for some professional development and also to keep our fire department running. And they've both been with us for a good long time, and we wish John safe travels, safe training, and we'll see you back in July. And that's all I have for tonight, to be short.
Questions, comments about the report or anything else from the council to the city manager? Okay, alrighty, Madam Clerk, your report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do not have a written report, but I do want to provide a verbal report. Absolutely enjoyed my day off yesterday, as it was my birthday, and so I took advantage of the fact that the city employees have to take hours of leave here, and so I little piecemealed it up until this point. And so while I very much enjoyed my time with my family this last weekend, I will also be out of the office next week, taking an actual full week of vacation so I can meet my mandatory leave requirement. So my staff will be here manning that. The deputy will be in the mornings and the administrative assistant will be in the afternoon. There will be some lap over for lunches and stuff, but there will be time on Monday and Friday where, because they work part-time, we will not have lunch coverage. So I just want to let you guys know that while they will be here mornings and afternoons, there will not be lunch coverage in the clerk's office next week for out of office. As I know there's been inquiry of staff hours going on in the clerk's office, so I just wanted to clarify that tonight. I also wanted to let the council know that I did receive confirmation from Dominion, who is the company that was selected by the state of Alaska to provide the new election equipment for 2020. And Dominion will be at the AML conference with the new equipment. So for those of you that are attending, they will be there for the clerk's conference portion, which is Monday and Tuesday. And you will be able to see that demonstration. And what I heard from her, I told her she needed to contact AML. I suggested she contact AML to be able to stay one more extra day so that all across the state delegates, council mayors can all see the demonstration. And she agreed, so she is contacting AML to try to provide that. So you all can see the new equipment for next year. It's very interesting. As I reported last meeting, I did go and see this demonstration and talk with the borough clerk, the 9th of October, and it's gonna be really nice because they're looking at doing ADA compliance equipment. So exciting stuff. I really can't wait for you guys to see it. 2 more things. The Stantec open house is tomorrow, 6 to 8. There are 5 of you that RSVP'd saying that you would like to attend. And when we have these open houses, this is an opportunity tonight for you guys to be able to figure out who's going, who's not, so you can do your rotation. So I just wanted to bring that up so that you can all figure that out, if that's okay, Mayor. And then last but not least, very exciting, is we have our boards and commissions opening. The recruitment is open. And we have, it was interesting because we had the advertisement in the Frontiersman on the 9th and 13th and received 0 applications. So after a week, we started getting it posted on Facebook, and within hours of posting on our social media, we received quite a few. That's what I'm gonna say, quite a few applications. We have 19 applications in hand as of right now. And so, yeah, that it is. It really also goes to show that social media is truly our outreach. That's hitting. Sorry, Frontiersman. I'm not saying that it didn't, but I did find it interesting that it was in the paper twice, and then until we hit social media, did we really start receiving the apps. So we have right now 4 applications received for Airport Advisory Commission, and we need 4. We have 4 open positions. We have 2 open positions on Board of Economic Development, and we have 5 applications. 1 is pending signature to be a complete app. We have 3 open positions for the Park and Rec Advisory Board, and we have 5 applications. We have 2 open positions for Planning and Zoning Commission, and we have 5 applications. Included in these applications are members who are currently serving and asked for reappointment. So I wanted to also let you know that some of these 5 are those 2 Planning and Zoning, or 3 Park and Rec, so forth. I don't know the specifics of who they are. I just got the numbers this afternoon from the deputy who's tracking this process and tracking all those apps. So that concludes my verbal report, Mayor. Thank you very much. And just the pending item is the Stantec open house and the attendance of the council.
Okay. Alrighty, does anybody have any questions for the clerk? Okay, and the Stantec you said was from 6 until 8?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the 5 members that are going to attend, what time were you thinking about attending? Councilwoman Sabrina?
So, I just have a question about the presentation, and I maybe could ask Stantec. Just is there, since it's an open house, is there an opportunity for? What I'm interested is hearing community feedback. I mean, we've received the presentation, so if there's like a certain time frame that would be happening, or if, I guess I'm just kind of confused about the agenda. That's all.
Go ahead.
We could ask that of.
Well, as far as community feedback, it is an open house, so there's no one period of time. There will be a presentation similar to what you have tonight about in the middle, but the feedback is typically written, or they can comment to the folks that are manning the desk. So to say at 7 o'clock you'll hear public comment, no, it's really my viewpoint for council is you be there, man a table, so to speak, and you can hear the direct input while you're there from the folks that come during that time, or meander through the crowds. But there really isn't a formal, okay, here's a microphone, speak your piece, public.
Okay. Yeah, Councilwoman
Thanks,
Brewer?
Madam Mayor. To clarify, you said in the middle there's going to be the same presentation?
So there's only one presentation, and you're getting it tonight. And it's available, and the screenshot runs through, I mean, it's gonna be on the screen, it runs through, and there's stuff on the tables for people to look at and comment. The first time we did it, it was, people were standing around, and really to generate conversation, we got up and said, okay, here we are, now, and it was a spark for conversation. So again, depending on the audience, there will be a similar, at some point in time, looking at the crowd, there's enough people here to give a presentation to talk about it in a big forum, as opposed to, if there's only 3 people there, we're not gonna we're not gonna get up and give a presentation. So it depends on the crowd, and the timing is based on the crowd. At 6 o'clock, if there's 100 people in there, that's probably a good time to do it. That hasn't been the case in any Palmer event that I've been to that's been an open house. It's been, there's 20 or 30 people that meander in and out. So we just try to pick, okay, we try to engage based on that night when we actually give a semi-formal presentation. So there's no telling.
Okay. So who, or,
Who's
I know,
ours?
yeah, I know I'm one.
Yeah, the members that I have on the event is you, Mayor, Councilmember Berberick, Councilmember Carrington, Councilmember Sabrina Combs, and Councilmember Valerius. And I didn't hear anything back from Councilmember Best, and Councilmember Linda Combs, I believe, said tentative.
Okay, all right. So what's some times that you wanna be there or not be there or whatever? Councilman Best?
Just a point of clarification from the attorney, in a situation like this where there is a large time frame, is there an OMA violation if some members were to cycle in throughout the evening, in and out? So like, let's say a couple of them say that they want to be there for the first hour and some of them want to be in there the second hour, is that going to be okay?
Well, I think the Palmer City Council is very attentive to the Open Meetings Act and does a good job on compliance issues. As far as making a pronouncement that there would be a violation, that's of course gonna depend on the facts. Now hypothetically, there is a case where a group of Anchorage Assembly members met without a meeting being noticed. It was quite a number of them, and the court issued a decision indicating that this was problematic. So the 3 rule is a good rule.
Okay. Okay, so, go ahead, sir.
And again, that's one reason we don't have a formal piece, so that it's not, okay, everybody shows up and you hear the same thing. It's an open house. So the cycling through, so long as you're not talking to each other and it's an open house. So you have to be, it's on you to decide if it's a violation and if the public perception, but that's one reason we do the open houses the way we do them.
Okay. So, Councilman Valerius?
Madam Mayor, I will decline at this point. So you're done for.
Okay, so are we down, what now? We're down to 4, okay.
Madam Mayor, I can only attend during the first hour from 6 to 7.
From 6 to 7,
Mhm.
okay. All right. Yes,
That would be about the time that I would prefer as well.
6 to 7,
Mm-hmm.
okay. Alrighty,
The
so,
other two come after 7.
okay, all right, so we'll come after 7 then, okay. Alrighty, got that taken care of then, alrighty. Anything else on the clerk's report? Anybody have any questions regarding anything? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mm-hmm. The next is my report, and you have my written report. A couple of things I need to talk to you about. One is, the city has generally always purchased a gift for the auction for AML. What have we budgeted for that? Do you know what that, 50?
The manager always takes
$5?
care of that, to be honest.
Madam Mayor, it's not budgeted. We've done it out of my marketing budget in the
Okay.
past, and you've all kind of said, keep it within. One year I did it, based on guidance from council. I don't know, one year the previous mayor did it on her own. And I think one year we got together the night before and said, oh nuts, we forgot, let's call back and somebody get something. So, we're getting ahead of the game. It's all on all to decide how much and what.
Okay. Alrighty, so what does the council think? You wanna spend $50, 500? What do you wanna spend? Councilwoman Sabrina Combs?
I think typically those items are in the $200 to $300 range for something nice. I wouldn't suggest that Nate get to pick it out, but
So, other comments from council? Okay. Alrighty.
Who's gonna do it?
Okay, so any objections from the council regarding that price range? Everybody okay with that? Okay. So why don't we do it this way, if you're out shopping and you see something, why don't we use the clerk as the note keeper, and you could say, well, Norm, I saw this, I think that would be good, or Nate, whichever one.
budget.
And so let's do that, and if we don't have something by November 18th, we will let Nate select something.
You'll be at conference by then.
Well, Nate, the 18th is Monday, what time do you go to the AML? You want it the Friday before? Okay, Friday before, so what is that, the 15th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you haven't gotten back to the clerk with some ideas by the 13th, 14th, then
Nate.
Nate's on the hot seat again, okay?
Yeah.
And so, all right, any other further discussion on that? Okay. And then the clerk has told me there is one council person that did a late registration in the past, and I don't think we have a policy on that, but in the past, that if there's been a change for either any kind of travel, whether it's AML or whether it's some kind of travel in there, there's been a change that was a request of the council person, then we have asked the council person to pay that. So is there any objections to any of that, to continue that? And maybe that's another thing, we maybe should put something in writing next year or something, so we have that. I think it's just sort of dependent upon the council person being willing to do that, but there hasn't been a hard and fast rule. So anybody have any objections to that or other thoughts that you'd like to talk about? Okay, alrighty. So that's okay, you have your direction?
I think our direction is to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, anybody have any questions? Councilwoman and Deputy Mayor, you have an addition to my agenda, or to my report?
It looks like you got them all.
Oh, okay.
It's,
Well, this
it's
is real
slowed down a
Monday.
little bit, the Veterans Day obviously it needs to be observed, and I hadn't had a chance to talk to you about going over to the wall, which I plan on doing myself. But it looks like you got them all. Be happy to see you at the senior center on Friday,
Okay,
celebrating their birthday
okay.
with Miss Julie.
Okay. Okay, alrighty. So the next item on the agenda is the city attorney's report. Sir, do you have a report for us this evening?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the attorney? Okay, the next item is new business and, the presentation on the Brownfields project from Santec Consulting Services. And Wendy, you are here to do that presentation. Can I have a motion from the council to go into a committee of the whole?
so moved.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we go into a committee of the whole. Discussion, amendments, questions regarding that? All those in favor, please say yes.
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 Those opposed, say no. We are now in a committee of the whole. Wendy, if you wanna come.
Good evening, council members. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity to share our final recommendations for the map made, or for the Palmer area wine planning study that we've been working on for the past several months. It's really, truly been a pleasure to work on this project with your community development staff as well as with many of your engaged stakeholders here in Palmer. So I'm pleased to have the opportunity, Madam Mayor, to present our final recommendations for the plan and to share the presentation, which is the same presentation we're going to be giving tomorrow evening as well. So for those of you council members who aren't able to attend the meeting, please be assured that you're receiving the same information that's being shared with the public and is being shared with all stakeholders at this point. Tomorrow evening, the format of the meeting will be an open house. And we will plan to give the presentation at 6:30 p.m. It's about a 30-minute to 45-minute presentation, but that will allow us a chance to visit one-on-one with members of the community before our presentation, and then also address any questions and also visit with them immediately following the presentation as well. So, again, thank you for your time this evening, and want to go ahead and dive right into the meeting or our final recommendations. So my name is Wendy Van Dyne. I know you, some of you will recognize me from previous visits to Palmer. I've been working on this study as a member of Stantec. I'm a landscape architect and planner. I've also been working very closely with Katrina Nygaard from Stantec as well. And Katrina has just been fantastic to work with. And I know Brad and Nate have also been, have enjoyed working with Katrina. Unfortunately, Katrina left Stantec in August to take a position with the city of Seattle. Yeah, so since that time, Brad and I have been working very closely together along with representatives from the borough to finalize the plan and the preferred recommendations for the study. So currently, the plan is sitting at 95% completion. Yes.
Madam, I just want to interrupt real quick. So this is a borough-funded project.
Mhm.
It's not a city-funded project, so that's why the borough has to be involved in this. I know that sometimes questions why we're dealing with them, but they are actually funding this study, so get that up front.
Yes, thank you, Nate. So where we are with the study, we're currently at about 95% completion. So we have our final recommendations assembled, we have the final report assembled, and where we are is we are here in Palmer for a third visit, presenting our final recommendations and receiving any final input before we wrap up the plan. So want to cover a few key items with the council this evening, want to provide a brief overview on the feedback that we've heard so far throughout all phases of the planning study. Also want to take an opportunity to present some market analysis and demographic information that we have assembled and evaluated which support our final recommendations. And then also want to outline final steps for project completion and project wrap up. Quick overview about the project. As Nate mentioned, this study is being funded through the Mat-Su Borough, and it's part of a $550,000 EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant. So this is federal dollars that are provided through the EPA, not only to assess brownfield sites, but also to provide funding for planning studies such as these. And the focus of the planning study is to identify ways in which brownfield sites in communities such as Palmer can be utilized in high and best use to serve residents of the community and to help continue the prosperity of communities in which they're located. So the project goals of these types of planning studies are really focusing on sites with the greatest redevelopment potential, encourage the reuse of sites, particularly in those locations that are located in a more urban or developed framework of the community, and to help transform underutilized properties into community assets so that they can help the human health and really become key attributes to support the quality of life in the communities in which they're located. The study area that we're looking at as part of the Palmer area-wide planning study for the EPA Brownfields Assessment Grant is the map-made block immediately east of downtown, east of the depot. And then you can see there on the exhibit, everything encompassed within the general or vicinity of the map-made block. So we're specifically looking at redevelopment options or the highest and best use of the map-made block, as well as the periphery and the surrounding areas of the downtown as a whole. Especially when evaluating a site like the map-made block, it's important to consider the context, how the block interacts and can influence activities within the downtown space, and how both sides of downtown can really work collaboratively and complementary with one another. So we've been evaluating the whole study area cohesively throughout every stage of the planning process. Speaking of the planning process, we've got 5 specific steps that we've been looking at throughout the duration of this study. The first visit, when Katrina and I came out earlier this year, back in March, is really focused on learning the place, listening to residents, understanding the existing framework, the existing site conditions that are going to impact the redevelopment of the site, and to understand how the site could be repurposed. Then we started to look at market conditions and started to explore some of the redevelopment potential and opportunities, hearing specifically and directly from existing property owners, as well as stakeholders who have a vested interest in the environment of downtown and into the redevelopment of the property, which includes residents at large through some of the open houses that we've held throughout the project. Since that time, we've developed some redevelopment concepts and we've solicited input on those. And now we're at the point where we are assembling our final recommendations and identifying specific ways to turn the plans into reality for implementation. Before we dove too far into design or even into the planning process, it's important to understand the existing conditions. So that's looking at planning priorities. So understanding the land use and the zoning of the map-made block, as well as the other surrounding parcels within the downtown space. That's also looking at transportation and connectivity. When we think about transportation and connectivity, we think not only about vehicular transportation and how that impacts redevelopment, but also about pedestrian connectivity, especially with pedestrian trails and making sure that we can support development that's walkable and promotes a high quality of life. And then we also look at wayfinding and open space and how those types of community amenities can really complement redevelopment and provide safe and great spaces for all to enjoy. If we look at existing land use, I don't want to spend too much time focusing on the existing conditions because I recognize that this is information that you have heard before, but I do want to just provide a brief recap on what we've considered. Looking at existing land use, we certainly reviewed the 6 prominent land uses that are most prevalent here in the city of Palmer, looking at low density residential, high density residential, commercial, parks and open spaces, industrial, and then certainly public properties. And those public properties are primarily institutional properties like the borough properties, the courthouse facilities, those employment centers that really do designate Palmer as an employment hub and downtown Palmer as an employment hub for the region. So we looked at how those land uses currently operate on the site as well as around the site within the downtown core. We also looked at the existing parking. When we look at redevelopment and reutilization of sites such as these, when you think about a downtown framework, parking is overwhelmingly what we hear from most, and it's oftentimes what we hear about first when we start to embark on planning studies. When we think about a vibrant downtown area, a lot of folks, especially in a vehicular-centric culture in which we live, it's important. So we did just a high-level assessment of the availability of parking areas within the downtown area, and overall, there's a really good distribution of surface parking areas as well as on-street parking areas. However, it should be noted that some of the surface lots are owned and managed by private commercial entities, and so therefore they may be limited or restricted in terms of the times of day that they can be utilized or by whom they can be utilized. So that's important to think about as well. We also looked at existing conditions, existing connections for the site and how people gain access to the site. So with this exhibit, the red dashed lines help convey the vehicular connections that provide access to the map-made block. And then the green areas help highlight the pedestrian connections and the sidewalks. So you can see there really is a lot of great connectivity, especially with the pedestrian access, with the pedestrian trails. Where we come into a challenging scenario is with the vehicular connections. Certainly, there are a lot of strong connections south of the depot, but north of the depot, specifically Dogwood, there is a gap in that connection north of the depot there. So that does get to be a challenge, especially when we look at the commercial viability for redevelopment and making sure that we do have adequate access to the map-made block. When we look at planning studies such as these, it's also important to take note of the existing context to help define design inspiration. And that could be design inspiration for how design standards could be developed to support and define how buildings are constructed, and it can also help define how open spaces are programmed. So we certainly recommend that whatever design does happen within this area, that it does pay homage to the cultural history and the vibrant colors and industrial heritage and rich agricultural heritage of Palmer and of the colonists and of the history of the community. And different ways in which that can be translated is through specific colors and textures of building materials, certainly the reuse of existing industrial type facilities, similar to what we've seen in other communities such as Waco, Texas, where they've repurposed some industrial parcels and have really turned them into important community assets. So these are important to think about as we start to propose our final design recommendations. When we were here earlier this year, in March, during our first visit, we just listened and we collected ideas from the public and from various stakeholders. When we returned in June, we came back, we timed our second visit with Colony Days. So we did have an opportunity to attend Colony Days events and visit with many members of the community, hosted an open house and also had stakeholder meetings. But during our second visit in June, we did present 3 redevelopment concepts. And the 3 redevelopment concepts incorporated feedback that we heard from our first visit, but they took 3 very different approaches in terms of the development spectrum and looking at lighter approach to redevelopment, sort of a middle ground approach to redevelopment, and a more intense approach to reutilization and redevelopment of the map-made block and the surrounding area. Concept A is an example of the concept that was developed taking a lighter approach to redevelopment, looking at incremental ways to take a lighter hand, addressing the least amount of improvement to existing infrastructure. So some of the key aspects of Concept A were to develop a couple of new 2 new 3-story mixed-use structures. And when I say mixed use, I mean the lower level would be commercial uses and the upper 2 stories would be residential uses. Providing surface parking for patrons, residents, and community activities within open green spaces and parks on the map-made block. And then also provide community connectivity through pedestrian trail connections. This concept would not introduce any new vehicular connections, but it would support the existing pedestrian connectivity. Concept B took things one step further. It takes a more active role in developing the site with a few improvements to the surrounding community infrastructure. And what this does is it continues with the 2 mixed-use 3-story structures on the southeast corner of the map-made block. And then it also introduces another new mixed-use structure on the northeast corner of the map-made block. And then it also introduces an extension, a vehicular extension to Dogwood, north of the depot, which would help improve pedestrian connectivity and flow to the map-made block. Concept B also looks at additional green spaces and then some improvements to the plaza space south of the depot. Concept 3 takes the most in-depth approach to redevelopment, and this one really does maximize the site redevelopment opportunities with the most changes to existing community infrastructure. So some of the key highlights of Concept C were to develop 5 3-story mixed-use structures with commercial on the lower level and upper housing on the upper stories, provide increased surface parking for patrons, and then establish greater areas of green space for community uses and parks, and then also looking at abbreviating the railroad corridor so that you can have increased use of that green space and have greater connectivity, not only with more pedestrian connections north-south, but then also with the Dogwood realignment. So when we were here in June, we shared our 3 concepts, and we heard a lot of feedback from the community. Some of the key highlights were really helpful in helping to inform us in our final recommendations and what we're outlining in the final report. What we heard overwhelmingly is more of a preference for concepts B and C. There wasn't a lot of support for concept A. What we heard most from residents is if you're gonna do something, do it right and do it well and really make the biggest impact for what you're trying to achieve. So most everyone we visited with preferred concepts B and C, with taking a more active approach to redevelopment and reutilization. There was a lot of support for additional pedestrian connectivity. There was also a lot of support for increased vehicular connectivity. Now, we did visit with some property owners within the immediate vicinity of the study site who did raise some concerns about that vehicular connectivity. The primary concern being the loss of potential parking stalls on those surface parking lots. What we were able to discern from conversations with those concerned stakeholders is that as long as there was a net zero loss of parking stalls in those surface parking lots, there could be support for a dogwood extension across that railroad right away. So it's a matter of looking at the redevelopment considerations and seeing if there's room to allocate or expand existing parking stalls or existing parking lots in a way that could accommodate the dogwood realignment, but also would provide an offset for those parking stalls. Also, a lot of support for mixed-use redevelopment, but in terms of the height of buildings, there's some concern about limiting or the potential for limiting some of the mountain views. So that was a concern that we heard. And then a lot of support for downtown residential options. And when I get into some of the market impacts and market analytics, I think you'll see why there's a lot of support and a lot of interest for those types of housing options. And then furthermore, continue support for the depot as a community meeting space, and then a preference for outdoor spaces to support community activities such as gathering areas, farmers markets, performance areas, and then different types of outdoor rooms that can really serve the needs of the community through all seasons of the year. The next portion that I want to share with the council this evening is just to highlight in some of the existing market conditions that are informing our final recommendations. At Stantec, our planners regularly partner on an annual basis with the International Downtown Association. The IDA is an advocacy organization for downtowns of all sizes across the United States. And Stantec puts out or assembles an annual report in conjunction with IDA that looks at the return on investment and the values that downtowns play within the overall community framework. And in looking at downtowns of all sizes, consistently, key metrics that rise to the surface are that downtowns deliver on average 13 to 64% of citywide tax revenue. Downtowns are demographically diverse with large portions of a city's foreign-born, non-white, and middle-income populations. Downtowns support a variety of retail, infrastructure, and other institutions. Many times they are an employment hub for the community. And downtowns really provide a high quality of life that attracts employers, investments, visitors, and residents. Downtowns really are inherently better because of those factors at rebounding from economic impacts, social impacts, and environmental shocks and stressors. So it's important to recognize the value that our downtowns play in supporting the overall health of the community. And in order to support that, those features, design and planning plays an important role. So when you look at redevelopment and the types of opportunities to increase the utilization of these brownfield sites, it's important to recognize that they should be walkable, connected, diverse, green, and most importantly, authentic. I think authentic is the key word, and that's what we've heard over and over again from stakeholders, not only property owners and invested stakeholders within the downtown core, but from residents across the board. Palmer is a special place. It's not Wasilla, it's not Anchorage, it's Palmer, and that's the way that it should be kept, and that's important to consider in terms of reutilization and revitalization. In terms of population, some really interesting market impacts. If you look at population growth from 2000 to 2023, that's a mouthful. In 2000, the city of Palmer was just over 4,000 people. In 2023, it's expected to grow to 8,154. It's expected to nearly double within that time period. Furthermore, the borough is also projected to grow significantly and is expected to see nearly an 83% increase in population by the year 2045. And this actually outpaces the growth of the state, which is only projected to grow at a rate of 22% by the year of 2045. So the borough, and particularly Palmer, are very well situated to benefit from this growth. The city is also experiencing a slight increase in the population above the age 65, which is also indicative in mirrors a pattern that we're seeing in communities across the country. However, it should be noted that the median age of Palmer in 2018 was 33 and a half years old. So you do have a large contingent of a younger demographic here, and that plays specifically into the employment hub and the employment opportunities that are within the downtown core. The median household income is projected to increase from 76,000 in 2018, which is the median household income statewide. So that's reflected, that's on par with the rest of the state of Alaska. But it's expected to grow up to 93,000 in 2023. So there's a lot of opportunity not only for those jobs, but for them to be well-paying jobs within the downtown core. And so when you think about those characteristics, those market conditions factored in with the younger age range, and then also a higher contingency of baby boomers who are retirees looking to call Palmer home. Those are some good conditions to consider for redevelopment and revitalization. In terms of market information for housing, the number of households is expected to nearly double between the year 2000 and 2023, which reflects those the growth projections that were presented in the demographic trends. But the data also suggests that there could be an undersupply of housing units. Right now, there's a vacancy rate of 1% for housing units in Palmer, and that projected vacancy rate is expected to remain steady at 1% until the year 2023. So that also indicates that there's not enough housing. The average household size is roughly 2.8. However, data does suggest that most households are living in 1 to 2 person units. So we're not seeing the same trends, especially when you look at the demographics, a higher concentration of folks over 65 and then younger than 35. You have a lot of empty nesters and a lot of young professionals or singles who are calling Palmer home. So that also suggests that you need a different type of housing unit to address that need. So there is an expectation that rental units and smaller housing units, different than this typical single family, could be in demand in the coming years. When we look at retail opportunities for redevelopment, in a nutshell, basically to explain retail leakage, it occurs when local people spend a larger amount of money on goods than local businesses report in sales. So that means that people go somewhere else to get a specific type of goods or service. It helps paint a clearer picture on what folks in Palmer spend their money on versus why they might go spend their money in Wasilla or in Anchorage, for instance. So people leave Palmer for big box shopping. That's it in a nutshell. If they want to go to Target, to Home Depot, to some Walmart, they'll go to Wasilla for that. But if they want to have a unique experience, if they want to visit some of the specialty retailers, go out to a unique restaurant, they want to stay here in Palmer. And that's why they come to Palmer. And that, again, reflects the authenticity of the place that should be maintained. So when we look at specifically the types of goods and services that people go outside of Palmer for, it's for motor vehicle parts and dealers. It's for those types of services. It's for furniture and home furnishings. It's for electronics and appliances, building materials. But people stay in Palmer for food and beverage stores, but they leave Palmer for health and personal care stores, clothing, sporting goods, but they stay in Palmer for food services and drinking places and miscellaneous and general merchandise stores. So that helps paint the picture of the retail market and what's currently happening to support future redevelopment. In terms of our final recommendations, we took into consideration all of the stakeholder feedback as well as all of the market information that we've assembled and presented. So what we did is we took all of those factors and we looked at the three preliminary concepts and we synthesized what folks preferred in each one of those concepts and combined them into our final preferred concepts and validated that against the existing market conditions that we saw from our analysis. So what the revised concept will illustrate is that we are aiming to maximize site redevelopment opportunities with options to move community infrastructure and maintain existing parking. At a high level, the site-specific uses propose development of 3 two-story mixed-use structures with commercial on the lower level and then on the upper level having housing units. This is different than in the previous concepts. It's taking it down from a 3-story down to a 2-story to help maximize and maintain some of those mountain views that we heard are so important. And then it's also helping to maintain areas for surface parking and to make sure that there are areas to support those daily needs. For community connectivity, we are proposing to keep the railroad tracks up to the depot so that there could be opportunities for a train to come in for special events to the depot. We did hear that from a number of stakeholders that was important to think about. And that the area around the depot could be reutilized to support farmers markets or expanded surface parking. We also are proposing an extension to Dogwood Avenue into the downtown space to Alaska. And the way that would be facilitated is we would be able to match Dogwood through a realignment and then expand that surface parking into Colony. So the final recommendation looks at repurposing Colony and a higher and best use of that corridor. Right now, it's essentially serves as a gravel alleyway with access to some businesses directly to the west of the depot, but it could be reconfigured to be paved, to have marked parking stalls, and to provide greater accessibility and greater use to support activities at the depot, and then also to help provide more parking areas so that there would be a net zero loss of parking stalls within the downtown space, even with that Dogwood extension. We also looked at adding additional surface parking areas, and then in terms of green space, really looking at those types of amenities that we heard from residents are so important. So that's looking at pedestrian connections, so increasing east-west pedestrian connections from the Map-Made block into the downtown space. That's looking at two-story mixed-use development. It's looking at outdoor community spaces that can be available for amenities for all seasons. And it's also looking at community performance venues, parks and green spaces. Pedestrian connectivity was really, really important. There's great pedestrian connectivity already within the community, so maintaining that and supporting that was critical for our final recommendations. And you'll see here in this exhibit where we have proposed additional pedestrian connections, not only around the site, but also within the Map-Made block that will help mimic the same or mirror the same pedestrian connectivity that you have in the block immediately to the south of the Map-Made block. So you really get a lot of great pedestrian connectivity in those community open spaces to help activate the space. You'll also find that within the open spaces, we are proposing a number of parks, green spaces, and parking areas. And it should be noted that I think when folks hear the word brownfield, it brings a very negative connotation. And I think that's a negative connotation because it's assumed that there are going to be a lot of dollars involved in remediating some of these sites. But it should be noted that parks and green spaces and parking areas are a very cost-effective way of remediating these sites because they don't entail as intense redevelopment designs or invasion into the site that you would with other means of redevelopment. So there's a strategic reason why we have proposed a lot of green spaces because it is a very adequate way to reutilize the space and make it available to the public and also help to mitigate some of the existing impacts that might be present. Finally, we want to recognize the fact that right now the depot and the Map-Made block and the downtown area as a whole in Palmer really serves as the beating heart for the community. And that, above all else, should be maintained and supported. And we really feel that with these final recommendations that you've got a document that's going to help provide that roadmap to help support future redevelopment so that it can continue to thrive as the beating heart. And we really want to recommend that the depot continues to serve as the community center for the city of Palmer. So as we look at the final steps for the plan, where we are 95% complete with the study document. We're going through final QA, QC on it right now, along with our representatives at the borough and soon Brad and Nate will also have a chance to review the final document. We're certainly here to present our final recommendations and hear final input from the community, which we will incorporate as appropriate within the final plan. And here to hear your thoughts this evening. So with that, I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but would love to hear any thoughts or feedback or questions that you may have.
Okay, council? Yes.
Madam Mayor, when do you think I got a chance to talk to you?
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was in March or in June, but
Thanks, Jim.
I really think the job that you guys have done in the overview is really amazing. And thanks for putting in the time and really thinking about
meeting our community needs.
Well, thank you. It's been fun to work on.
Other comments or questions? Councilman Best?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Conceptualizing these things is always great. You get to kind of feel some stuff out. There's been several studies been done throughout the city of Palmer. When we start kind of making, and I'm going to say plans, but I mean, this is just concepts. When we start making plans as a entity, the city, when we're talking about private properties, I get a little queasy. But I also am very cognizant that we also have like the quad area already, which is a large public park already that's open for events to happen in. And also there's businesses, commercial entities already that have stages and whatnot. And here we are conceptualizing stuff that could be in conflict with some of these existing businesses. And so I'm a little leery of this. Now, when we start talking about infrastructure, the Dogwood extension, that's a great concept for us to start talking about and really have those in-depth conversations, because there's going to be some people that are going to be impacted, but there's also going to be a great impact to the city of connectivity. I really get that. And again, when we start talking like play areas next to an existing roadway, I get a little nervous about this kind of stuff. So I get it. I'm ready for more conversation to happen, to put a stamp and say, you know what, I think this is the way that the city needs to go. I think there's a lot of other things that are, I hope has been really looked at. Because on one hand, we're shifting some stuff north that currently already exist in the pavilion area. And so, are there businesses going to be impacted south of this development opportunity? Are we focusing in on one area that maybe is in some respect kind of a dead spot in the middle of town? And is that going to have impact in the rest of town? So I'm a little nervous about the city entity stamping that, this is the direction we want to go. So, and I appreciate the effort and the work.
The microphone is turned off. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. I think those are all very valid concerns, and I think that anyone, certainly within a leadership position, is valid to feel that way. I think what we're looking at with the recommendations with this plan is that's what they are, is recommendations. There's certainly nothing set in stone. There's nothing that the city has to accept or even has to mandate, but what this is just a guiding document. It's essentially just the starting point for envisioning how these sites can be redeveloped. I think in terms of some of the specific concerns that you mentioned, Councilman, I think certainly looking at the growth projections and the demographic projections and the demand that Palmer is going to continue to see, I think that there could be increased demand for some of these amenities. But certainly the programming of these spaces is not set in stone. And I think as the community comes to a point in time where they can look at a more specific design, that certainly leaves the door open for additional input for specific design considerations and weighing whether or not the specific programming of these spaces is still adequate to suit these needs. Because Palmer is going to continue to evolve over the next several years, and ideas change, and it's good to keep that flexibility within the plan. But I certainly appreciate your thoughts and your comments, and thank you for voicing those.
Council or Deputy Mayor Linda Combs?
Thank you. Over the years that I've been involved on the city council, a big question's always been what could be done on this particular, in this particular area because of that scary word, the Brownsfield, what can be done that's not going to be outrageously expensive because of potential contaminations, etc. And this helps a tremendous amount in the area of Imagine, because I have some of the same concerns as Councilman Best, but I know that from sitting in an EPA office in Juneau, it's, well, you're just going to have to go forward you know, it could be this much, or it could be this much, and that means that it could cost this much, or it could cost that much, you know? And this is a one more step, and, I'm thankful for this particular step of showing us what's possible, and to not be as frightened off by, the EPA concerns, et cetera, because we do need, and most of, all of us here at this table, I believe, have different visions of Palmer, and first and foremost, and I think I've heard it for over 30 years, you know, you keep Palmer, Palmer, and there's ways to do that, and yet still embrace the growth that we've been experiencing, some years more than others, but we're gonna continue to do so. So thank you for the concepts. If nothing else, I can tell very much how much you took the data and from the community and you incorporated it. And that again is something that's pleasurable to see. You know, for example, the going from 3-story to 2 stories. I mean, our scenery is one of our big draws, let's face it, you know. And we need to not block that out, that's for sure. So, I appreciate the balance between the pedestrian and the vehicular as well. You know, because I think that takes in the concerns of all the different age groups, and everything. So, thank you again for your time.
Any other questions or comments from council members? Okay, all righty, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, sure.
So as it was mentioned, this is not something that, you know, we have to accept or are expected to accept. But the other flip side of this is, you know, one of the comments was we're only gonna allow 2-story buildings. We already have building code that says how many feet we can build, and I think it says we could build a 3-story building right now in any of these places. So when you look at this document and you see some of the recommendations, it's our responsibility as a city to look at them and say, that is a good idea. Now we need to incorporate that in our code or in our policy or our plans, because, you know, that was a good idea. We don't have to do everything here, because it is, as you mentioned, private property. If they wanna build today a 3-story building that's 45 feet tall, you know, we got a U-Haul here. We've got other facilities downtown that meet code. If code says you can do it, you know, we're behind the times. So just because it's a plan doesn't have to have our stamp, but there's things in here we need to look at as far as, you know, is that how we want downtown to look? We can put this on the shelf tomorrow and then somebody comes in and says, you know, you said you weren't gonna allow 2-story buildings because this thing had it. Well, shame on us for not doing anything about it. So that's what this is. It's a tool to guide us on, you know, that is a good idea. We're gonna help infrastructure. You know, maybe Dogwood is the piece that rejuvenates the rest of this, and we don't have to do anything except build the Dogwood extension or whatever we call it. And then, you know, build it, they will come, and that's kind of what we hope. So this is just, again, it's just some ideas on how to encourage growth of some sort. And if somebody wants to build a 2-story building, or if they wanna build a 3-story building, you know, maybe that's okay. If it's so far away from the view shed, you know, how big is the DSJ building? It's 3 stories. Does it block the view shed? Well, you know, it's been there forever. Who cares? We're gonna tear it down because it blocks somebody's view that, you know, they haven't had for 50 years. So those things, you know, we gotta kind of take it with a grain of salt when, you know, we're gonna block view sheds. If you walk there and you're standing on Alaska Street on the corner of Vagabonds, your view shed is just so. And that's a 1-story building, but your view shed is that building. You're not looking at the mountains because there's a building in front of you. So again, each piece of this has something to put perspective, and, you know, is this really what we're gonna do? And again, we don't have to stamp this, but, you know, everybody at this table has a piece to say, you know, I like that. Let's move it forward, because it's gonna generate some interest on the private property owners to do something with it. Because they haven't done anything with it now for various reasons, but growth is coming, and we can encourage it by, you know, look what we did, property owners. You know, we want you to do something, as opposed to just waiting for somebody to do something else. So that's my 2 cents on the whole thing. We don't have to adopt it, but if we like stuff in here, then we need to take action so that we incorporate it, so that it does become something that we can enforce or encourage.
Councilman Best?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I think that's the big difference between adopting and accepting. You know, we as a council and a community, we accepted a document that had been presented to us many years ago. We didn't utilize it as a guiding tool, and so accepting it and adopting it, I just want to make sure that we keep a clear understanding of that, because when you accepting it, the work that has been done, it's great ideas. When you're adopting it, okay, this is the way we're going to go forward with things, and it becomes kind of a not so much a concept, but as a guiding, more of a directive. And so I just want us to keep that in mind, because we can conceptualize great things, and we'll market and the economy and personal preferences. That's what's going to kind of develop us as a community. So I appreciate it.
Any further comments from any of the council? Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you tomorrow night, or some of us will anyway. Okay, can we have a motion to come out of the committee on the whole?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we come out of the committee on the whole. Discussion, amendments, comments by the council? All those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed say no. Okay, we're out of the committee on the whole. Next item on our agenda is action memorandum number 19-075, approving a council community grant in the amount of $400,000. Wow.
Whoa.
Ooh, I'm gonna spend the money tonight.
Like I said, the number on the paper is
We're gonna have a great conference.
We're gonna treat, those 500 students really well when they come to Palmer. To Palmer High School to support the Alaska Association Student Government Conference field trip to Palmer on November 2nd, 2019. I think it's really more than just the second. I think they're here for the first, second, and third or something.
Starts October 31st, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at Palmer High.
Yeah, so, I don't know if that makes a difference on there or not, but, they're gonna be in town for more than just a second, so. Well, what's the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
okay. It's been moved and seconded that action memorandum number 19075 be approved. Comments, questions, amendments? Deputy Mayor Combs?
I thought that in some aspects, the application was fairly well done. I know it's the first time that the high school has applied for anything, so I have no problem with approving this, with the exception of, we do have a scale that's used, a pre-check, different qualifications, and I think that it was, rated, there was a couple of areas where it was rated a little bit lower, and rightly so. But particularly, as always, the application does not clearly state how and when the city's going to receive any kind of post-event information, and that's, I don't think, an unreasonable expectation anytime someone fills out these grant requests. So if we do approve it, which I'm presuming we will, if we could just make a point, once again, of stressing how important that is to follow up, because at some point, I can see us starting to deny perfectly, good sounding projects, but because they're not following the rules that we set for it, and rightfully so. There's rules, and we need to follow the rules. So, if that makes any sense at all, I just would like to be assured, I guess, that something will go along that will stress to the individual or the group that we do need to hear about how they spent the funds.
But just,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I was just clearing my throat not to get your attention. I'm sorry. If I'm not mistaken, On the grant application, we don't ever ask for feedback. So perhaps we should just add something to the application that asks for that. There's nothing on here that tells them that they should provide us with something after. I think if we just added that, then Mr. Wallace would rate them higher than a 3 every single time, possibly. Thank you.
Yeah, that was gonna be my point, because I was glancing at, there's really nothing saying on the application, you know, that's the final step. So, anyway, yeah. Any other questions, comments from the council?
So I'm sure I'm sure if this is approved, I can have a conversation with the student leader to come back afterwards and report on that.
Or they could bring all 500 students here.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
just a positive offer or suggestion, since this was a student leader, to have a student or a representative to present to us would have been a nice way to kind of build a little rapport back and forth. And so I look forward to next year's application where we might have somebody sitting here and encourage us, so.
They travel, this is around the state, so
Oh, so this
it's
is
not
the 1
been
year.
since, what, 2008, I think, or something. So,
Fair enough.
yeah, we may all be gone by the next time they get. Then they take term limits, yeah. Well, let's see, that's 13 years, I don't know, yeah, that's a long time. So, and I'm sure Kim would, do that. In my mayor's report, I think you've been seeing for some time, I will be addressing them on the night of the 2nd of November, so if the city manager hasn't had a chance to say something to Kim by that time, I'll say something to her and be sure. So, okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve action memorandum 19-075, please say yes.
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 Those opposed say no. The yeses have it, and action memorandum 19-075 has been approved. The next item on our agenda is action memorandum number 19-076, approving a council community grant in the amount of $225. See, I did it again. $225 to the Alaska Farmland Trust to support the Full Harvest Festival at the Palmer Depot on November 3rd, 2019. What is the wishes of the council?
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded that we approve action memorandum number 19-076. Discussion, comment, questions, Councilwoman Sabrina Combs?
I just have a question to the manager. When we do an in-kind donation, does it come out of our budget? Does? All right, just curious. Thanks.
We want the depot to look like it's making money, see, so we
Got
transfer
it.
from one pot to the other.
And if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So the depot is invoiced, it's invoiced to me, and then we do move the funds. When we do in kind at the event center, it's similar, but not always captured dollar for dollar that way because of the way the ice works.
There's no time.
Yeah.
Do you know the time of the event?
I had mentioned earlier today to the clerk that this, event needs to be put on our calendar. And she was wondering if anyone knows the exact time.
I do.
Pardon?
I do. It's from
At noon?
It's from 2 to 6.
From 2 until 6. Okay, thank you. So that will be on, you'll be hearing from the clerk regarding that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor of approving action memorandum number 19-076, please say yes.
Yes.
Those opposed, say no. Okay, action memorandum number 19-076 has been approved. Madam Clerk, items placed on the table.
We do not have any tonight.
Okay. Next is opportunity for the audience to again address the city council. 3 minutes if you're representing yourself, 5 minutes if you're representing a group. Audience participation is now open.
Mike Malevsky. I live at 325 East Fireweed Avenue. And somewhat in defense of my compatriot, Tim Rocky over there and his frontiersmen, we are a web of information. And I did a quick check, for example, while I was back there, and I looked at the City of Palmer's Facebook page. I looked at City of Palmer's website, and I listened to the presentation tonight, and I noticed that not on the calendar, not on the website, was any mention of the event that's happening tomorrow. So I went over to the City of Wasilla, which I do from time to time, and I noted that their events, they have a system for rotating events, something that's coming up that's important that appears on that landing page. I look for things all the time. I go out, whether it's the state or the city or whatever, to find information. And the thing that works best, I find, if there's a coordination. So if you look one place, it's going to be someplace else. So if you're on Facebook and it's an important item, it'll appear on the website. It'll appear in the paper. And obviously, the Frontiersman also has an online presence. And that's another way that happens. When Tim writes an article about the event that's coming up, that's another place where people pick up and do these kinds of things. So I'll just segue quickly to the DOT work that's being done out there, and I'll use the number 13,481. 13,481 are the number of people reached by Radio Free Palmer's use of Facebook to talk about changes that were occurring in the flow of traffic. They went viral. And I can tell you this, it was a surprise because very often when you do a post, you're not quite sure. Sometimes you can predict how it's going to work, but very often you don't. But when it does hit, you know you've done the right thing because there's one interest, and a lot of people are looking at that, et cetera. So in the case, for example, of all of the boards and commissions, I saw the reference, it's on the website, but I think there are ways to enhance that, to have people be aware of ongoing vacancies that occur. For me to find out who was on the various boards and commissions, I went to the minutes that are there, and that's very good. And on the minutes, up on the top right, you can see who's on that board and what vacancies there are. But it would be nice, for example, in some other places, present that, whether it's the borough or the city of Wasilla, et cetera, kind of a comprehensive look at it in a way that attracts people. So I'm just encouraging a comprehensive use of all of the facilities that you have in order to make these things happen, because then it'll work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience that would like to address the council?
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Stephanie Nowers. I live by Kepler Bradley Lake, so I'm not in the city of Palmer, but I am running for the borough assembly seat that is District 2, which includes the fabulous city of Palmer. So I was very interested in the presentation tonight and appreciate the work by Stantec to come up with a plan. My one suggestion on your public notice there is, while it's listed as an open house, it's not really clear what you're sort of where you are in the process. If you can kind of make it clear what sort of input you're looking for. And I notice on the plan itself, it says implementation. So my understanding from tonight is you're really still kind of envisioning and you're trying to put things onto the map and figure out where we are. And if that can be made clear in the public notice or as you come into the meeting, I think that will be really helpful for the public to know kind of where you are in the process in terms of formulating their feedback. And mostly I was just here to listen tonight because I think it's important to know your community and know what the city council is doing and know the people. So thank you.
Thank you. If I could have the two people that testified sign in on the there's a sign-in sheet over there, ma'am, so, thank you. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council and staff. My name is Stu Graham. I'm the first vice president of the Alaska Municipal League. And as you're aware, we do have the Alaska Municipal League fall conference coming up in mid-November. And probably the most important thing that we will be discussing at that conference is whether or not AML, which is what the Alaska Municipal League goes by, whether or not AML will establish a mechanism whereby to collect online sales taxes. The Supreme Court decision said that the taxes must be collected for a state, must be collected by an entity and then distributed. Since the state of Alaska does not have sales tax, they don't have a method of collecting that, so AML will be presenting an option to the state whereby AML can then become that tax collection entity and then distribute those taxes to the appropriate persons. We have been, looking at this extensively for about 8 months now. I'm not sure if the city of Palmer has had somebody on the working group that has looked at that. But one of the important decisions which will be made in the November meeting is whether to move forward and how to move forward. The board will be making the decision on that. There has been quite a bit of discussion, which Councilmember Combs has participated in, about how we can move forward on that. But I would encourage you, before the AML conference in November, to talk amongst yourself, talk with Mr. Wallace about how the city of Palmer would benefit from collecting these online sales taxes, which is not currently able to gather. And if you have questions, please make sure Mr. Wallace is aware of those questions so that we can make sure that they're adequately answered at the November sales conference. But on behalf of AML, I look forward to seeing as many of you there as can be there. I know you can't all be there, but you can probably all find time to be there for part of the conference. Some of you for the sales tax meeting, hopefully Councilmember Valerius for the newly elected officer training. So we've got all sorts of things for all sorts of people at AML. But please look closely at the sales tax proposal so that we can move forward with that, and AML can be a huge monetary benefit we feel to the city of Palmer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to address the council? Yes, sir.
My name is Tim Rocky. I'm not sure if I'm speaking to you as a frontiersman reporter or citizen of the city of Palmer right now, but so I won't offer any opinion, just information. There is going to be 500 of what I would refer to as the most inspirational, motivated young people in the state. They're going to be converging upon Palmer High School. Anthony, my intern, who you've seen here at meetings, is not only going to be attending, but going to be offering coverage. He's working on that right now. One hasn't happened until 2008. I was actually a part of planning that conference. It takes a tremendous amount of work, but the amount of good things that go on at these conferences, I can't list them all in 3 minutes. So without violating the Open Meetings Act, I encourage all of you to attend, talk to people, and what they're going to do in General Assembly is they're going to come out with a lot of draft resolutions. Even in Palmer, in our schools, we've had resolutions that have changed the way that our schools do business just based on what the students wanted. So I think it's a very worthwhile event. I know everybody has not a whole lot of time to spare. We're busy people, but I encourage all of you to go down and check that out.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else in the audience would like to address the council? Okay, seeing no one else, I'll close audience participation. And Councilwoman Boebert, we'll start with you for council comments.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Let's see, first thing I want to say happy birthday, Norma. I did not know it was your birthday. And then Wendy, thank you very much for your presentation. I, for one, have never thought of it as anything other than recommendations. And I find it really exciting to think that Palmer could develop in a way like that. I feel like Palmer has a really great vibe to it, and some development like that would only enhance it. So thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow night. Chief McNutt, good luck and stay safe. And then one last thing about 19 applications for the boards and commissions is pretty exciting as well. It's pretty cool to see that many people want to be a part of Palmer and planning for Palmer. So
2 weeks to go.
anyway, Oh, and last but not least, I've been roped into the senior center style show on Friday. So if you have nothing better to do at 11:30 on Friday, stop by.
Be sure and check with the clerk to see how, because there'll be 3 of us there already.
Yes,
I'm at the General Public.
Okay. Councilman Carrington.
Almost get this to work. I'd also like to thank Wendy for her presentation and all their hard work on that. It gives a lot of food for thought. That's it.
Chief McNutt, I wish you well. Norma, happy birthday. And again, Wendy, some of the key things I think that were so appealing to me about that are actually the potential for new business development. When you're in the business world, a rising tide lifts all boats. So the more we can bring in, I think that that's really going to be a great thing for us. I know a lot of 30-year-olds and mid 20-year-olds that live in Anchorage that kind of want to come to Palmer, but they're not sure. So if we were to do something like this, it's just going to grow our town and make us more economically viable and even cooler than we already are.
Councilwoman Sabrina Combs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a few things today. I was able to attend the Matt Subero Candidate Forum on Saturday, so thank you to Frontiersmen and Greater Palmer Chamber of Commerce for hosting that. It was exciting to hear from their candidates, especially in District 2. I know that we will be in good hands, regardless of who is elected. And it was just a really good turnout, so it was nice to see people there. The Stantec presentation is amazing. There are so many of my peers that are hoping to open businesses and that have been opening businesses here in Palmer, and it's exciting to see what the potential could possibly be. So thank you for your hard work on that. Saturday is National Drug Take Back Day. There will be a space at Palmer Fred Meyer from 10 to 2. Encourage folks to dispose of their drugs safely, and that is happening across the country. There's also a spot in Wasilla at Wasilla Fred Meyer for your Wasilla friends. And then safe travels to Chief McNutt. I can't see you over there, but there you are. Safe travels, please. Thank you.
Councilwoman Best.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief McNutt's deployment kind of just brings to the forefront again of the sacrifices that many in this country expend at for us. So thank you, sir.
Deputy Mayor Combs.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with something to say, John. Safe travels and keep in touch. Facebook, you can still do Facebook from over, my brother did. That's how I kept in touch. So, but safe travels and your family will be on all of our minds as well. So I'm going to throw out here that I am agreeing with Mr. Molesky about we need some better usage of the social media. The social media works. But sometimes piecing it together and not having the continuity is a little distressing. So I personally, my personal usage of the City of Palmer's website has dropped to nearly zero, and I used to use it all the time. I don't find it friendly at all. So I've just gotten some different sources of places I go to find out some of the information that I want. I'm on the phone more than I used to be too. So, but I think that it needs to be looked at, and then whatever goes out on Facebook needs to be really clear, very, very clear. For example, what Ms. Nowers said earlier this evening about, it needs to be clear about the presentation tomorrow evening, at what stage are we at or whatever. So some of us know, some of us get it, we cut right through it, but not everybody does. So I'm looking very much forward to AML for a couple of reasons. I'll let some of the others go and listen about sales tax. I'm looking forward to Census 2020 I've been bringing it up for about a year and none of us have kind of bit on this, but you know, frankly, it's extremely important. And I ended up learning that in 2010 because as a volunteer, I took on Census 2010 because the mayor was too busy. And it is a fascinating process. It's an extremely important process to our community to have an accurate census. And it doesn't just happen, you know, so I'll probably be putting information in front of the city manager and mayor again, you know, about the kind of information that we need here and what we need to be doing here to encourage all of our constituents, all of our people in the city, whether a constituent or not, all of our businesses, everyone, to take very seriously the census process because of what it does mean to us down the road. So other than that, the senior center has had a couple of new events in the last few weeks. And I thought the forum for the candidates on Saturday was great. There were a few hiccups, but they had nothing to do with either the Chamber of Commerce or the Frontiersmen. They did an excellent job of putting on that forum. And it was eye-opening in some respects. The previous weekend, when they had the Fall Festival dance, I am told that the mayor and her husband were the prize dancers. You know, so next time we have one of those, I'll make sure you know about it so that we can go in rotating turns and watch Noel and Edna show us all how to do it. So, thank you.
With that, I'll adjourn the meeting.